Hey there, and welcome back to this episode of On Thriving Astrology and More with me, your host, Taylor Schuler. Thank you for joining me. So, one of the things that you may know that I do is as an astrologer, I help entrepreneurs, I help folks who are aspiring entrepreneurs, who are changing careers, who are business owners, existing businesses to leverage the power of astrology for their success in whatever way they want to be successful. One of those ways that I love working with folks is branding and marketing. So I'm super excited. In this episode, I'm talking with Kristen Lawton. I will read the bio in just a sec, but we had such a fun conversation. Kristen, you can see I talked through her chart, is so good at what she does. So I think it's so important to make astrology real, tangible, practical, and to use it for all of our greatest and highest good, but in a real world way. That's what I do. And I don't think I've read my chart on this show or had anyone else do it, but that's one of the things that my chart is here to do, is share this information, make sure that I'm taking the spiritual and grounding it down on earth. And so that's why I'm having a conversation with someone who doesn't do astrology. She is who I'll introduce her as. And as an astrologer, I'm like, hey, this is some practical information. So we have a really cool conversation. And at the end of it, Kristin will tell you how you can get in touch with her. I highly recommend it. She's super cool, so fun. I hope you enjoy this conversation. But before we go there, who is Kristen? So Kristen Lawton is a brand and digital marketing consultant. She is a professional with 20 plus years of experience directing communications and branding strategies. With her marketing and project management expertise, she's able to leverage consumer insights to drive brand and campaign strategies, shaping future marketing plans. She's a strategic leader who builds and manages relationships with internal and external stakeholders, or at least she has in the past. And she has been really successful in helping to create a culture of open dialogue to help people to achieve their goals. So some of Kristin's really impressive accomplishments are that she founded the District Brand Bar in 2020 to help entrepreneurs like you and small businesses like the one that you have or that you aspire to have to craft and market their brand. She also led the rebrand of a company called CFED to in one of their campaigns in 2017. She has produced successful conferences with over 1,200 attendees, and she's managed website redesigns and so much more. So definitely check out her website, which we'll talk about at the end because it's super fun. And there's a quiz that we talk about, also super fun. And I will just say, cheers and enjoy. Hey there, welcome back to On Thriving. I'm your host, Taylor Schuler, and I am here with Kristen Lawton of the District Brand Bar, which is super cool. Thank you so much for joining me, Kristen.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So, I found Kristen and I found each other through the Income and Impact Summit, right? That some of our colleagues, friends were running, and we were trying to help entrepreneurs to increase their income and also increase the impact that they make as entrepreneurs with some of our tips that we have based on what we do. So I was talking about how, as I do here, if you know me, talk with astrologers, talk with you as an entrepreneur about how astrology can support you in your business. And Kristen, tell us about yourself and your offering for the Income and Impact Summit.
Yeah, so I help solopreneurs and small businesses really get a handle on their brand and marketing. And I help you make it efficient, effective, and effortless. And that was sort of what my talk was about. It was about really how to, market your brand with ease. And a lot of that has to do with your client journey and really narrowing down how you're actually getting people to know, like, and trust you by following this path. But yeah, so I help people sort of market their brands with ease, in helping them set up all their systems and routines and just really make their marketing, their brand sort of more authentic, more relatable, and easy to do.
Yeah. And I gotta say, Kristen, I was like really impressed by your offering because we all had, what was it, 60 seconds?
Yes.
And I sent them a video and it was like 5 minutes and 41 seconds. And I was like, they'll just figure it out. And she was like, excuse me, you need to make it 60 seconds. And I was like, shoot, I guess I do. And your video was just like so crystal clear. It was like so focused,
Oh, thank you.
and I mean, that's what you would hope and expect from someone who does like branding and marketing, but that's not always the case.
Yeah. I will say that was getting down to a minute took me longer than any long presentation, like to really be like, okay, how am I going to say all of this in a very succinct way? It was a challenge.
Totally challenging. But you did it beautifully and it
Thank
seemed
you.
effortless. And and that's why I was like, double click on Kristen.
Yeah.
And then I go to your website, the District Brand Bar, and I'm like, okay, first of all, this is beautiful. It's clever. It's fun. It's creative. And I'm like, hey, you want to come on the podcast? I'd love to read your chart. And you're like, let's do it.
Yes.
And
yeah, so I had like my theme around my business is all around mixology and cocktails. And if you are in my membership, we sort of like pretend that you have a bar that you're building out as you think about your brand and your marketing and serving your customers. And so it's just a fun way to sort of like, because I love cocktails and making cocktails, and it's a fun way to present all the tips and tricks I give about marketing and branding.
totally. And so I just want to say cheers.
Cheers.
Cocktails in that spirit. Yes. Take that sip. And
yes.
Yeah, I loved it. So I'm a Pisces rising. And
okay.
So Pisces is known as being like very creative, very spiritual. I see it as like, that's where my astrology comes out. It's how I connect with the universe. I connect with other people. I've done stuff that was connected to community service, and, having sort of like a community mindset is something that's important to me, like feeling compassionate in the way that we relate to one another. Those are all pretty Pisces traits. And so Kristen looked at your chart. Your birthday's on March 3rd. And so you're like, hey, Taylor, I'm a Pisces, but I'm just going to tell you right now. And you gave me like your time of birth and place and everything. So I've got your chart. And I look at your chart. You've got a Pisces sun. You've got a Libra moon. I don't know if you're aware of that. A Libra
No,
moon.
I mean, I've done like the app OnStar or something maybe.
Yeah.
But like sit down, but I don't actually know what any of that means.
Yeah.
And like I read it and I was like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I just know I was a Pisces. And when you go to like the magazine, newspaper, you like look up that you're a Pisces. And that's like my experience.
Yeah. And then you're like, I don't
know what rising or moon or that stuff is. So I'm so curious to like actually understand it.
Yeah. And so you were like, I just want to let you know, like, I don't really feel too much like a Pisces. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like that totally makes sense. Cause I'm a Capricorn sun. And for a long time, like, I guess I could see it as a kid. Like I've always been pretty ambitious and stuff like that. But your sun sign actually doesn't kick in until like age 30, 35.
Oh, interesting.
And the sun is like the energy that you use. But before I dive into the astrology, it's like dive in deep, like, what do you know about astrology, and like, what are your preconceived notions, and like, what are your thoughts? Like, just whatever. And you could say like nothing, anything. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I think like, I'm like, okay, well, Pisces, I'm a water sign. Like anytime I'm by water, like I need to be in it. Like if we go hiking, I'm wearing open-toed shoes so I can like walk in creeks, right? Like I need to be like it, like, so in that sense, I'm like, yes, I'm a water sign. I'm a Pisces. That makes sense to me. I don't know if that is actually a thing. I love any kind of like assessment. So anything that I can learn about myself. And I feel like sometimes maybe it's just like you lean into something that you like know about yourself, whether that's like true or not. So you kind of like make it true. That I find that there's lots of assessments out there that are like definitely on point. And so with astrology, it's like, well, I think there are aspects of Pisces that sound like me, but anytime you see those, like, if you're a Pisces, you're this. I'm like, no, like, I don't respond that way. That's not what I like. That's not it. Like, it never rings true to me. So I've never like put a lot of weight into it. Because like just Pisces on its own, I've like, well, maybe then I heard that maybe like the dates changed. And so maybe like I could be something like, so I
Mhm.
haven't actually put much stock into it, but like, I know that like, as I get more into like, I learn more about human design and Enneagram and other stuff, like that makes a lot of sense. And then I'm understanding more about like moon cycles. And so I just think there is a lot more that like I could probably learn, and that just like I've just like at the surface, because it doesn't feel like it fits for me the way some people are like, oh, I am a Capricorn, I'm a Libra, like they're like 100% into it, and I've never felt that way. So I'm like, maybe it's because I'm like at the cusp, and like I'm early in the Pisces. I don't know. I'm curious.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love all of this. And it's just so true. So I feel like, so thank you for sharing your experience, because I'm sure a ton of people relate to your experience for sure. I mean, I do certainly, like I mentioned with the sun sign. So
Yeah.
what we see is that actually in the past, people, and by the past, I mean before like 1900 or so. So like the past 100, 150 years, when sun sign horoscope columns became
Yeah.
popular,
Uh-huh.
um, people actually didn't go by their sun sign.
Oh.
They went by their ascendant or their rising sign. So they would actually like someone would
How would
be
they know it?
right. And you don't even know that today. Like
Right.
you would need someone to calculate it for you. And today we're very lucky to have a lot of software like CoStar and
Right.
different
Co-star
apps that can help you and just like tell you if you just put your time of birth in, or an astrologer like me,
Right.
and they would go by their ascendant sign, and your ascendant or your rising sign is the zodiac, the constellation that was rising above the eastern horizon the moment you took your first breath. So like the sun rises in the east, well,
Oh.
behind the sun there's stars, right? You just can't see
Right.
it because it's like light out. And so that was the sign, because it's like the impression that you make. And there's 360 degrees, like a circle. And so there's 30 degrees in all 12 signs, and that's 360 degrees. So not only do you have a sign, but you have a degree. Now, the degree, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but like you're going to be your sign, and then your degree is going to maybe tell you a little bit more, but
Mhm.
it's really the sign that still matters.
Okay.
So, one of the reasons you probably don't relate to being a Pisces is because you're actually a Taurus rising.
Okay.
And so, if you're reading your horoscope, I would recommend for you that you read the Taurus horoscope and get familiar with that, and then start to see how that feels
Okay.
for you.
So
And
what's the Taurus? Like what is, I know my sister is a Taurus. I don't know what, but again, now maybe she's like not the, like
yeah, so Tauruses are they like comfy, they like beauty, they like luxury, they like snacks, they like naps, they like nature.
Okay.
Um, and snacks are also of this
Right.
variety.
Yes.
They're very aesthetic people, and it's very like comfort oriented. And so
Mm.
Taurus is concerned with like the resources. So it's a fixed sign, and it's an earth sign, and it's the second sign in the zodiac. So earth means it's very concerned with material security. Do I have a roof over my head? Do I have food on my table? Do I have money in the bank? And if not, what am I going to do about it? And whenever you make decisions in life, it really is like concerned with like, that's the ultimate. For me to feel safe and secure, I need the bottom line to be like, I got a bed with some comfy covers on it. Taurus takes its time too. It's like methodical and really steady, and can work really hard. I think most astrologers are like, Taurus is just sleep all day. And I'm like, actually, like, I've known a lot of Tauruses. My mom was a Taurus rising. My ex was a Taurus sun. And it's like, y'all work really hard, really hard. And so if you get tired, it's because you worked really hard.
Yeah.
like, like the bull, like the ox in the field on the farm, like they're pulling the plow. That's hard work. That's why we get the ox to do it instead of a human to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
They're pulling hard, but they're consistent and reliable. And Taurus, every sign has a ruling planet. And so the planet that's in charge of Taurus is Venus. And so Taurus risings are very Venusian. And Venus is about relationship. It's about money, it's about beauty, art, creativity. And Venus is actually your most important planet for a couple of reasons. One, because you're a Taurus rising. And two, because I also do like a little astronumerology. So when I add the numbers of your birth date together, I get 26. And when you add those, wait, let me check. No, I get 24. Yeah. And when you add those two numbers together, you get 6. And the number 6 is associated with Venus in the astronumerological system that I use. And it's all about someone who's like really amiable and friendly and like people love them. And it's just sort of like adding an extra Taurian layer there.
Okay.
The third reason you're super Venusian is that your moon is in Libra, and the other zodiac sign that is ruled by Venus is Libra. And so there's what we call like celestial Venus, and then there's earthly Venus.
Okay.
There's daytime Venus and there's nighttime Venus. And your Venus is a nighttime Venus, by the way, because Venus was visible in the sky only at night when you were born. So after the sun went down, you could see this beautiful white curly star in the sky. And that was your star, and that was Venus. So when you look up in the sky at night, when Venus is an evening star, that's probably the one that would catch your eye, I would imagine. So I would get one of those like sky view apps or something.
Yeah, I have one of those. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and it makes sense. I mean, looking at your website and things like that, it's just so beautiful. It's fun. It's friendly. You've got a community. And what if, like, most people don't have cocktails by themselves, right?
Right.
Like have a bar for like themselves. Like some people do, but like the point of it is Venusian. Venus, like it also has some qualities, and Venus's qualities are like moist, you know, and that's one of those words that people are like cringe at. But like, what does that do? It brings together. It's the glue. It's the glue that brings people together. And so I feel like you really do that through your work, because what does branding and marketing do?
Yeah.
It helps connect clients to services. And so like you literally in so many ways are just like bringing that glue together. Now, the other thing, your Pisces sun, I said there are 2 signs that Venus rules, but I lied a little bit, because there's actually a third sign where Venus is not like at home or ruling, but she's what we call exalted. Like she's in her queendom.
Okay.
And that sign is Pisces. So Venus is the exalted ruler of Pisces. And Venus, there's 2 planets that we call benefics, meaning like they're beneficial to us and they bring blessings. And Jupiter is the greater benefic, because Jupiter is like big and abundant and it's a huge planet. Venus is a small planet, so we call her like the lesser benefic, but it's not really lesser. It's just, you know.
Right.
So one of the planets that's like a huge blessing to you, to all of us, is your planet, which is like super lucky and super like an amazing thing to happen. But then the fact that your sun is ruled by like the greater benefic Jupiter and then exalted by Venus is like, you're just someone who's got blessings. You've got abundance, you've got blessings, you make connections, you know, you can tap into the zeitgeist. That's something else that Pisces does. It taps into the collective zeitgeist. And so I look at some other things in the chart too. So like, I look at the relationship, like I was talking about with Venus being an evening star. So seeing it, at nighttime, I'm looking like out my window at the sky as if I can see it, but I can't. And we call this like the Venus star point. So the relationship between Venus and the sun. So, you know, everything moves in the sky, like, you know, the moon moves and like it's full and then it's gone and stuff like that. Well, the same thing kind of happens with the planets and the sun. They move around and we can't see it like a half moon or a full moon or like a half Venus or a full Venus, but they've still got these cycles. And so we pay attention to when it would be like a new moon essentially for Venus. So when like Venus and Sun are together, and we call that the Venus star point. And this Venus star point is when the sun and Venus meet up before you're born, which can be up to 9.5 months beforehand, because Venus and the sun, they just meet up every like 9.5 months about. And so like everyone is going to have this, like
Okay.
who you go to school with when you grow up kind of a thing. And it tells us like how the best of yourself is expressed. So your natal Venus in your chart is in the sign of Aries. So like, even though you've got this Libra, you've got this Taurus, you've got this Pisces, the way that your Venus wants to express herself is being uniquely you. That's so Aries. It's like taking the initiative, taking action. Let's go. Let's do that. That's why when I reached out to you, you were like, oh, booked, done. Because Aries is a cardinal sign. So like, it doesn't wait. It's like, oh, I'm supposed to take action. Like, I'll do it. Absolutely. No problem. And Aries is just all about its individuality. So it's just, I love the way that your Venus shows up. But the Venus star point that I was mentioning, Venus and the sun met up in the sign of Virgo, which is a sign that wants to be of service. And so there's like so many layers. We talked about like that's like comfy. We talked about the Pisces that's like connected into the zeitgeist and can be very creative. And the Libra that's also about relationship and balance and beauty and harmony. You've got the Aries that's like there to take action. And now you've got this Virgo where like underneath the best of you is like Kristin showing up to be of service to those that you love and also working really hard. So I know I said a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, where did I lose you or what's resonating and what's not?
So a lot is actually resonating. I mean, it does make a lot more sense that like, it just, you wouldn't be just ruled by like the sun sign or whatever. Like there's a lot more like complexity. So like, that's really interesting. And I think like, yeah, everything you said sort of like feels much more right than just Pisces. What do you mean when you mean like connected to the zeitgeist?
Like the collective unconscious. I think I froze.
Oh, you did freeze a little bit.
I froze a little bit. Whoops. Okay. Mercury's retrograde, y'all. Okay.
Yeah.
About to be stationary. So what I mean when I say connected to the zeitgeist is Pisces is the last sign. So we've got 12 signs. Pisces is the last. It's like Aries is the alpha, the first one. Pisces is the omega, the last one. And so it means it's traveled all the way through the zodiac. It's had all of these experiences. And there's something about that and also just Pisces as a water sign. As a mutable sign, as being ruled by the planet Neptune, which is also very watery, foggy, boundaryless, that Pisces is able to tap into spirituality, into like the collective unconscious. I call it the mind mycelium network. It's sort of that invisible thing that connects all of us that we can't really explain, but it's the feeling of the moment. Like, you know how like when the Yankees won in 1996, it was like a feeling of the moment, you know? And like the 4th of July is like a feeling, you know? And like the pandemic was a feeling.
Yeah.
Like you're able to tap into that underlying feeling that we all have and like access it. Like, what do people want? What do people need?
Yeah.
People thinking like, you know, when, like a new saying will come up like 30 years ago, it was like off the chain or like, that's rad. Like you might be one of those people who's like, oh yeah, like, did I make that up or did I hear that? Like, you don't know the difference because you're just like tuned in.
Yeah. And it's funny because I am like, of all of like my friends and family, like I am the most tuned into like, just like current events, the best restaurant. Like I'm sort of like that person that everyone knows that I'm going to like be on top of like that type of stuff.
Yes. So, okay, here's an example. Tell me, so I was, looking at your website, loving it, and saw, read about you and you at the bottom, because it's district brand bar and all that. You're like, my favorite cocktail is the Negroni.
Yes.
Okay. When did that happen? Tell me this story.
Oh, well, I mean, it happened over time, but I think any type of aperitif or bitter type drink just takes me back to like being in Italy and just that like vacation mode.
Yeah.
And that maybe it's in a very like tourist way, but I feel very like a classy, like, laid back, like very cool feeling of just like sitting along a Riviera or like a piazza in Italy, like sipping my Negroni. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm guessing that the trip to Italy was prior to spring or winter of 2023.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So anyone who's listening to this, if you haven't heard of a Negroni, especially like the new like meme, real viral thing that's out there where it's like Negroni Spagliato, right?
Oh, yes.
I think many people never heard of a Negroni before the Negroni Spagliato thing went out. And so this is an example of like Pisces being connected into the thing, knowing the trend before it's going to happen.
Oh, yes.
Because that's something that's also very Aquarius, and Aquarius is the sign that comes right before Pisces. Mm-hmm. And people think Aquarians are eccentric because they are actually anachronistic, meaning like, and when we think anachronistic, we often think, oh, they're like old fashioned, but anachronistic just means out of time. And so Aquarians can be very futuristic. And that's why people think they're eccentric, because it doesn't fit in time. But Pisces takes that Aquarianness to the next level. And it's like intuitively like bringing in the trends, and it's like synthesized it into oneself. So, and the other thing that's very Pisces, since it's a water sign, are like, is cocktails. Right. So like, we're like, I'm not very Pisces. And I go on your site and it's like, you're under I was like, girl, like how you're not a Pisces? Hello.
I think it's because I've never considered myself spiritual.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't like to sit and just like think about things. And, in that, like I'm just in that, I'm a lot more like practical. I like doing things. And I think, like those like really deep conversations, or the people that are, I do consider myself creative, but I'm creative in a different way than like artsy, like I'm creative in like coming up with like systems that are like different and like more efficient, or in the way that like I present my brand and stuff. But I think it's because it's like very artsy and into your feelings and spiritual, that like that's the piece that I'm just like, I don't feel that.
Yeah, totally. And then I mean, like I get it. Like, and you don't have to be spiritual to like be a Pisces, but that is totally the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I actually have to pause for 1 second. I'm so sorry. All right, so we had to pause there for a second, but we were saying that some people say Pisces is like really spiritual, and if you feel that, and that's like the archetype or the stereotype that's going around, of course you're not going to feel understood at all. But I think that the creativity is working for you. And what we say about your sun sign is that your sun sign is sort of like the fuel in your gas tank to keep you going and to move you forward. And that really like helps you do the rest of your life. So we say we use the sun, we rely on the moon in order to strengthen our ascendant. So we're using the creative fuel of Pisces. We're using the fuel of being able to be intuitive and connect into the collective zeitgeist. We're relying on the fact that your Libra moon wants harmony, balance, understands beauty, is a relationship expert, can really feel that between people, knows the extremes, certainly between relationships, and then can find like the solution, because it's like that didn't work and that didn't work. Let's find the happy medium. And then both of those things, the relationship aspect and the creativity, then strengthen the Taurian need, desire for safety, material security, beauty, balance, snacks, comfort, luxury, being down to earth and grounded too, being really down to earth and grounded, and then and working really hard. So that's how we kind of combine the sun and the moon and the rising sign together to come up with a bigger picture. But there's like even more in the chart. And one of the things that I like to do with the folks that I work with is just look at their chart and their business's chart and figure out like some of the basics, really, which is like, what colors are you using? What fonts are you using? Who are your people? Who's your ideal client? And how can you operate differently? And what are some of the strategies that you can use to monetize? That's what I did in the Income and Impact Summit, was like using your sign to monetize.
Yeah.
And so for you, I look at District Brand Bar website, and you've got a white background, which is beautiful. That's Pisces. White and rainbow. And also like this kind of like purple red, those are Pisces colors. But I find like white and rainbow are like the things that show up more than that weird purpley red color.
Okay.
So you're doing that. Then the Taurus rising, Taurus is kind of a coral. You know, it can be like kind of orangey red.
Yeah.
That orangey red is what you got on District Brand Bar. So like you're doing that. You're showing up how people want to see you and how people do see you. And then Libra is more of like a light blue or like a white or something like that.
Okay.
And so you could use that or not. But as a Taurus rising, like your folks are Scorpio risings. And so they actually really, or they're Scorpios in some way. There's something Scorpio about them. Your ideal client, I would say. So they're water signs, they're intense, they're deep, they're feeling. They actually really appreciate the fact that like, you're like, you've got the District Brand Bar thing. Cause they're like, that is, I would say like outside, like it's like on the border of unconventional, right? Like it's not like wrong or bad, but it's like, it's edgy, you know, it's a little edgy. And that edginess makes them feel really comfortable because they're like, oh, she'll accept me. Oh, I can be comfortable. Oh, like it's okay to like be myself. It's okay to be experimental, to like put a dash of this and a cherry on top. And they, you know, they have big feelings. They have a lot to offer. And so I don't know, do you work with like folks who are spiritual, or they're doing emotional work? Like, are they therapists, or like, are they researchers, or like, who are the types of people that you?
It's interesting. So I work with, in terms of like industry wise, like across the board, a lot of coaches though, mostly like business coaches, but I do find that a lot of people come to work with me because they just like how unique of a brand that I've built, and that like it's a very strong brand where like, you know, that this is like my stuff, and so they like, this is what I want to.
That makes sense. Yeah. Totally. Like the strength. And I think that's how the intensity is probably showing up in Scorpio. Like they're intense people. They want someone to meet their amount of strength and intensity. And they are probably coaches who can go deep with their clients. Right. Who can sense exactly what's going on with their clients. And that's why they're really good at what they do. And that's why they need someone who's really good at what they do to match them in their intensity and energy. And they're probably people who move like really quick and fast, because if you've got Uranus, the planet of instantaneous. One of my mentors, Rick Merlin Levine is his name. He says Uranus is the planet of the instantaneous resolution of irresolvable opposites. The instantaneous resolution of irresolvable opposites. So it's sort of like the sun in an unexpected change that happens. And so maybe they had a sun in an unexpected change, or they need someone who's very inventive. And the one thing we haven't talked about yet, I did touch on it a little bit, is the sign of Aquarius. And so in our chart, we have angles, which I kind of mentioned, and the ascendant or the rising sign is one of them. But we also have like the point in the sky that is directly overhead at any given time, like the middle of the sky. And that's another really important point. And then the one that would be completely opposite, that we can't see through the other side of the earth. And the one that's like in the middle, that's called the midheaven. And it describes our legacy, and it describes our public image and what we end up being known for at the end of the day. Like, especially at the end of our life, like after we're done, the story has been told. And your midheaven is at 20, let me just double check before I say this. Oh no, it says, yours is at 2 degrees of Aquarius. And Aquarius is ruled by 2 planets. One of them is Uranus, the other one's Saturn. And so Uranus in that 7th house of your ideal client, it's inventive. And so they see you as inventive. And then you meet these people who want to be creative and inventive as well. And they see you being forward thinking. and they see that you have a system that works for them. That's another Aquarius thing. And you have this container and a community for people. So do you have a community?
I do. I have a brand and marketing membership where they get the coaching and support they need from me, from the community, plus sort of like the lessons and tools they need to create, their brand and market it and create those systems for themselves.
I love it. I love it. All right. So the other thing that I just want to say, because I think I'd be a bad astrologer if I didn't say this. So your Pisces sun is in the 11th house. The 11th house is the house of groups of people and also of our hopes and dreams. And so that's another signature in your chart that's giving an additional testimony to the fact that you are working with groups of people. And you're working with groups of people for your own hopes and dreams, but also to support their hopes and dreams. And then your moon is going to be in the sign of Libra, and that's in your 5th house. And the 5th house is the house of creativity, joy, and pleasure. And I think that you're just doing all of these things beautifully, whether it's like the colors that we talked about with like the Taurus and the Pisces and the Libra, or the fact that you're honoring your 5th and 11th house by working with groups of people in creative ways. The fact that you're working with coaches who are really good at sensing their clients, and very passionate about their clients and finding success and being successful and working with someone who can meet their level of success. You're doing it all brilliantly. And the last thing I'll say is, I love this thing that we call the part of spirit. It's a mathematical calculation. I won't get into it, but your part of spirit or your lot of spirit is what we look at for your genius. So where are you like a genius in your chart? And your genius is in the 6th house. And the 6th house is like it's one of the houses of work. And so that's why your genius is coming in here to like really connect people to their work, make their work better for them. And it's also in Libra. And so it's about bringing that beauty, that harmony, relationships together, for work, with work, amongst people who are, your they're your clients, but they're also like your colleagues, and in many ways, right? So I think that's what I can say about like how beautifully you are living your chart, and your business is thriving because you're really honoring your chart as well.
Yeah, it does seem that way. It's so funny because like in one of my like mantras is just like to find like the joy in everything that you do, and whether that's like marketing or just like having that like balance, and like I do work hard, but I'm also like work-life balance, and like working to live the life that I want, and sort of building that is very important. And so it feels like it all like makes sense too in that way.
Awesome. So do you have any questions or clarifications, or is anything that I said you're like, I just want to set the record straight before we go?
I mean, no, I think it is fascinating. I think thinking about just, and we can talk about this in a minute, but I have this quiz, and the results are sort of divided. There's like fast action takers and like slow action takers, and like I think like the majority of my list, a lot of them are more like the slow action takers, and I'm wondering if maybe I need to like be attracting more of those like fast action takers, like the way you were saying, like those sort of ones that are really more intense and ready to jump in and do the work.
Okay, what a good question. I love that you asked this question. It's such a good question. So thank you for asking it. So your ideal client, that's Scorpio ruled descendant and 7th house. That's where we see the ideal client. And you do have Uranus there. And I did say it's like instantaneous and it's really fast and things can change. Now, Scorpio is a water sign, but it's a fixed sign.
And I don't know what that means.
So fixed sign means it just wants to keep the fire going. It doesn't really want to start it, and it doesn't really want to change it. It just wants to like maintain the status quo. So it can be kind of evocative. And so is Taurus. Taurus is also a fixed sign. Leo and Aquarius are the other 2 fixed signs. So all 4 of your angles are fixed signs. So it's energy that we're all familiar with because we all have all 12 signs in our chart. But certainly for you, like This is where you show up, where they show up, where your legacy shows up, and where your house shows up.
Okay.
Sort of like, let's just tend to the fire. Let's
rock. Yeah.
Now it might have a lot of different fires, but it's just about like keeping them all going, not starting. Cardinal signs will start things, and mutable signs like Pisces will change or end things. And so the other thing that's going on, so that's one reason why they might be kind of like slow, because like that's actually another way of interpreting like the fixed energy is like it's resistant to change, like it's kind of like slow and steady, but it's reliable and it's consistent. And we need fixed signs, like cardinal signs. Like my cardinal sign, I can start stuff, but God help me for keeping something going. So I need that fixed energy to like really help me to just keep it going.
Right.
Now, the Uranus that is like that change in your chart, it's actually retrograde. So it's like, so retrograde means it's closer to the earth than it normally is. Okay. And from our perspective, you know, when you're driving on the highway, you're driving and a car comes from the ramp, the on-ramp, and it goes like this. And then it catches up to you. And then you start slowing down and it starts speeding up. You're both moving forward. But for one of you, it looks like you're moving backwards. And for one, it looks like you're moving forwards. Now, that's because it came closer.
Okay, right.
So that's retrograde, really.
Okay.
It's like, the quick and dirty version. So it brings intent, it pulls focus. And the other way that you could say is like when Mercury's retrograde, like it is now, it makes you reconsider, revisit, revise. Those are all the things that it wants to do. And it could also like just do the opposite of what it normally does. So for all of those reasons, like I think that the folks who are coming to you, like maybe they've been kind of stuck in a place. And they're coming to you because they're ready for a change and like wanting you to like kind of light the fire underneath them.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. So thank you so much.
Are you kidding? Thank you. I just got a whole reading.
This was so fun. And I also just want to point out before we wrap up that today is Friday when we're recording. It's a Friday in May, and May 12th. And I have green back there, which I couldn't help. I'm wearing green. It looks to me like you're wearing green.
I am wearing green, yeah.
You know what Venus's favorite color is?
Oh, green.
It's green. And today, Friday, is Venus's day.
Oh.
So that's why like Friday is payday for people, because Venus is money, and why you go to happy hour, like hang out with friends on Friday. It's all Venus stuff. So we're doing our Venus thing very well.
We are.
So so thank you, Kristen, so much for being here. Thank you for being such a good sport and giving me the privilege and the pleasure of being able to read your chart and consult with you.
Please. Yes, thank you.
And share your brilliance. So where can people connect with you?
So you connected with me on Instagram, District Brand Bar. My website is districtbrandbar.com. You go to either of those, do the big link that says take the quiz. That's where you're going to learn your signature brand marketing style. And it's really fun because it's divided into cocktail styles. So you're either on the rocks, shaken, stirred, or neat. And from those results, you're going to learn how to market yourself more authentically and do it with ease, because you're going to lean more into your personality. So it makes it all much better. And then you'll get lots of tips and tricks of how to sort of it's similar in that it's learning more about how you work and your personality style so that you can market your brand better.
Yeah. And I will say I took the quiz. I thought it was super fun because it's about cocktails. It's about how you want to be and act and do, and also where you want to be. Do you want to be in this country or this?
Right. Yeah.
That was so fun. And I was like, how is this going to work out? And I just want to share with folks, my style that I got was stirred. So can you tell me about, now that I read you, can you just read me for a second? What am I doing?
Yeah. So stirred, you're very steady. You want, you focus on relationships, but you go deep. you're less in that like influencer style, but more like you understand sort of the importance of building like deep relationships. You are more of a slow action taker where you like your sort of like to-do list. You want to stick with the strategy and like get it, really get the strategy like down before you like move on to something else. You're a little more hesitant to like take on something else. A lot of service providers, I feel like more than like coaches, are like in the stirred category in terms of like entrepreneurs in this like online world. Because they're really good. They're like, very like a little bit of task oriented, but they're great with working with clients. They understand what's going to work for them. Yeah. So, I mean, stirred's great. I have so many friends that are stirred.
I mean,
yeah.
I think it makes perfect sense because like as an entrepreneur, it's so hard to like keep all the plates spinning in the air at one time. And it's like,
Yeah.
sometimes it's like not even that like I don't want to do it. It's just like I don't have time to like switch my systems. Like it just takes a ton of
Right.
energy.
Yeah.
It's so
And yeah, and it's very like harmonious too. So like the reason I paired like stirred with it is because like when you stir a cocktail, you're like seamlessly blending it together without sort of like diluting anything. It's like you're getting that balance of everything, but everything's going to show up really strong as well. Versus so I'm shaken. So I'm very much like the social influencer. I really lean into relationships, but in a like larger, broader, like fun sense. I'm a fast action taker, as we talked about. I'm like, yes, like I can make decisions really quickly. But so shaken, when you shake with a cocktail with ice, it's diluting it. And so it's sort of, it's watering things down and it's blending it really, really well and like infusing it like with a lot more energy. But it's also sort of like because it gets diluted, it's a little more easier on the palate too, which is like that social piece.
wow.
And then, yeah, so then there's On the Rocks, which is the like very powerhouse like person that they are like very much task oriented. They are fast action takers. They need to like, they're the ones that are speaking up on all the calls and getting themselves out there. They're the ones launching nonstop. And you're like, how in the world is that person doing it? It's because they just like, they need that checklist and they are like powering through it and they're like really good. And they like things, like the On the Rocks, with it's like a little bit of dilution from the ice, but it's still just like, what you get is what you get. And then Neat is like kind of it's my opposite. And they, like they just want things exactly as it was intended, right? And so like they like research, they like data, they like case studies and testimonials, but they're not really gonna like mix things up too much. They're gonna lean into like the long form content because they have time to really like mull it over and make it right. And so it's neat because it's like as the distiller intended, you're not sort of mixing the liquor with anything. But so they are sort of slow action takers, but very task oriented.
Wow, that's so cool. I really love this. I love this because my gears are turning as you're talking. I'm like, okay, fixed, mutable, cardinal,
Right.
but also like I hear like the earth, the air, the water, the fire. And so like it's like you've distilled the archetypes that like I use with astrology into your, which is brilliant that you've done this, by the way, and so Pisces sun that like I said, going through the whole zodiac and all this experience and then like coming up with your own creative solution. That's like,
well, I can't take the framework itself of like the personality types. I went through a wonderful program with Linda Sadu, who's like the queen of quizzes. And so that framework specifically, but the way that I did it with the cocktails is definitely, my spin to it.
Absolutely. You should take credit for that. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. I love it.
Yeah, so anyone listening, go take the quiz and it's really fun. And you'll get a better sense of like, and I've actually started leaning into it myself, with how I market my brand. And it's changed a lot. And like literally the minute I started doing it, I started with the launch of my quiz. And instead of sort of launching solo, like I did this like happy hour, like Instagram live, like cocktail blitz. And so I had a bunch of people coming on. I was making cocktails. We were talking and it was very this social thing. And so like just leaning into it just felt so much more natural for me. than sort of like a by the book launch with more just like a lot of, like where we're doing it solo, lots of emails. And so like just actually leaning into me has like worked really well too.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love this. Oh my God. I like my mind is just exploding right now with all of the possibilities. So I think it's beautiful. The one thing that about your chart also just have
Yes.
to mention, because I just feel like I have to mention this. Your
Please.
second house, which is like your house of like money and stuff, it's ruled by
Okay.
Gemini, which is information. And that's what you're giving to people, right? Like,
Oh,
and you're
yeah.
like trading in information because that's what branding
Uh-huh.
is. So you're just, yeah, you're living your chart so
I
beautifully.
love that.
I love how you help people. I love how you have started living your chart. And so definitely go to tell us your URL again. It's the districtbrandbar.com
Yeah, districtbrandbar.com. Mm-hmm.
and take the quiz and figure
Yeah.
out what your style is and connect with Kristin.
Yeah, thank you. It's, it is so nice to hear because as entrepreneurs, you make this leap to start this business and you just like hope, you feel like you're doing something right. But so like to know that like the stars aligned and like it is actually like what I meant to do is comforting.
Absolutely. I think when we are aligned with like our charts, that's when the success kicks in. And so you're feeling like there's something that's sort of like in the way or stuck or stagnant, reach out to Kristin, reach out to me. Like we'd both be more than happy to combine our expertise to support you because we all deserve to thrive and work to live instead of live to work and create the life of our dreams and just thrive. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Kristin. And we'll see you again next time. So take good care.
Thank you.